What's up, guys? Today we are talking about the origin of the Bagrationi Dynasty, which has long been a subject of debate between Georgian and Armenian historians. This is not surprising since the Bagrationis are one of the oldest and most remarkable royal families in the world. In their time, the members of this dynasty quickly rose to prominence in the South Caucasus, and as was to be expected, various legends emerged about their origin. During the Christian era, theories about the divine origin of royal lineages became especially widespread. At a certain stage of development, a theory of the divine origin of the Bagrationi dynasty also emerged in Georgia. The start of citation. O king, called the son of the prophet David and the anointed of the Lord. The end of citation. With these words, Grigol of Hansta, one of the most prominent Georgian spiritual leader, addressed Ashot the Great Bagrationi, expressing the belief that Ashot, through King Prophet David, was a direct descendant of God himself. This legend, created within the Georgian historical tradition, was later shared by our neighboring peoples, the Armenians and the Byzantines, as confirmed by the accounts preserved in the works of Hovhannes Draskanakertsi and Constantine Porphyrogenitus. Following the rise of the Bagrationi dynasty, this legend was further developed and refined. In the 11th century, the Georgian historian Sumbat composed a special treatise that presented the complete genealogy of the Bagrationi family, providing a broad ideological justification for their divine origin and their royal and socio-political authority. Thus, the legend of the divine origin of the Bagrationi family gained prominence during the reign of one of its most powerful representatives, Ashot I the Great. It is noteworthy that the Armenian chronicler Movses Khorenatsi claimed that the Armenian Bagratunis were not of Armenian origin, but rather came from Georgian region Speri, though of Jewish descent. He based this assumption solely on their names. According to him, the family names of the Bagratunis were derived from Hebrew, Sumbat from Shambash, Ashot from Asud, Varaz from Vazaria, Bagrat from Bagadia, and so on. However, Khorenatsi's reasoning is incorrect, since despite certain phonetic similarities, these names have entirely different linguistic origins. Yet there is one point where Khorenatsi was not mistaken, that the Bagratunis originated from Speri. According to prominent Georgian scholar Ingorochva's research, the territory of historical Speri since antiquity was divided into three parts: Armenian, Iberian, and Lazic. The Armenian part, also known as Upper Speri, that is, the section of Speri included the sources of the Chorohi River up to Bayburt. After the division of Armenia in 387 AD, this portion of Speri became part of Western Armenia, which ceased to exist as an independent region around 389-391 and became a Byzantine province. The Lazic zone, also known as Middle Speri, was located north of Bayburt and included the plain of Ghat. The Iberian Speri, also known as Lower Speri, encompassed the portion of the Chorochi Valley where the city of Speri, modern-day Izmir, is located. In medieval Georgian chronicle called Juanshar's Chronicle, describing events around the year 628, it is written, the start of citation. Then the border of the Greeks with Kartli extended to Speri and the edge of Klarjeti to the Black Sea. The end of citation. In general, the border of Kartli in Speri was part of the hereditary Georgian region of Klarjeti's principality. From ancient and Byzantine sources, it is evident that the Lazic and Iberian parts of Speri were inhabited by Kartvelian or Georgian-related peoples, specifically the Laz peoples, the Meschi, and the Susper-Iberians. Non-Armenian populations also lived in the Armenian part of Speri. This is confirmed even by Armenian historians themselves. According to Moses Horenatsi, western region of Bagratuni's domain, that is, so-called Armenian Speri, the Armenian language was not spoken. The same is noted by the Armenian ecclesiastical writer Stephanos Suanetsi, who remarked that the Armenian language was not an issue in Speri. Thus, the population of the so-called Armenian Speri was in fact Georgian. It is well known that Chorochi Valley and its surrounding lands were historically inhabited mainly the Laz people. Because of this, famous Georgian-Russian scholar Nikolai Marr proposed the hypothesis that the Bagrationi Dynasty was of Lazic origin. This is supported by onomastics, the system of family names with the Bagrationi house, specifically those distinctive names that end with the grammatical element T: Bagrati, Sumbati, Pivrati, Ashoti. It is noteworthy that another ancient Georgian noble family, which also originated from Lazeti, the Orbelians, used a similar naming pattern with the same grammatical suffix "ti." For example, Lipariti, Rati, etc. We also find names with the same "ti" ending preserved in the family onomastics of Western Georgia. For example, there are some modern-day family names like Djibouti, Glonti, Zhrenti, etc. It appears that the suffix "ti" is the Laz-Migralian equivalent of the Georgian genealogical suffix "t", which was widely used in medieval Georgia. It is also known that in Old Georgian, the endings "ti" and "t" were dialectically interchangeable with "ta". For example, Pivrati, Pivrata, Ashoti, Shota. As for the Armenian onomastic system, scholars have expressed the view that these Bagrationi names have no connection to the Armenian linguistic sphere and that they spread there only after one branch of the Bagrationi dynasty became Armenianized. As we can see, there are two main theories in historiography regarding the genesis of the Bagrationi dynasty, the Georgian and the Armenian. The Georgian theory was proposed by famous Georgian scholar Ivane Javakhishvili, who unequivocally asserted that the Bagrationi dynasty was of Georgian origin, with its ancestral homeland located in the historical province of Speri. According to Javakhishvili, Speri was part of ancient Kartli's territorial domain, inhabited predominantly by a Georgian population and characterized by a Georgian cultural presence since the end of the first millennium BC. Arguments for the Georgian origin of the Bagrationi dynasty are: 1. Javakhishvili argued that As early as the classical period, Sperry was under Kartli's cultural and political influence. 2. The earliest Georgian forms of dynastic name, Bagrationi, follow distinctly Georgian linguistic patterns, pointing to native Georgian naming traditions. 3. The appearance of the Bagratids on Armenian soil should be explained by the migration and later Armenization of one branch of the originally Georgian dynasty. He emphasized that Sperry, along with Tao, Klarjeti, and much of the Black Sea hinterland, all belonged to the broader Georgian historical and cultural sphere. Javakhishvili's conclusion, the start of citation.
The origin of the house of Bagrationi must be sought not on Armenian soil, but within the territory of Kartli, specifically in the southern region of Sperry. A familial connection between the Armenian Bagratids and Georgian Bagrationi may have existed, yet their original homeland was without doubt Georgian land.
The end of citation. Similarly, another Georgian scholar, Nikomar, held that the Bagrationi dynasty belonged to the southern Georgian cultural sphere, particularly the regions of Sperry, Tao, and Klarjeti, which during the early Middle Ages were firmly within Kartli's political and ecclesiastical influence. Mar emphasized that the very form of the Bagrationi name Bagrat and Bagrationi is a natural construction of the Georgian language, while its Armenian parallel, Bagratun, is a later adaptation which appeared only after parts of Tao and Klarjeti came under Armenian cultural influence. In his own words, the start of citation.
The name and essence of the Bagrationi dynasty originated on Georgian soil. Only later, when the Georgian elite of Tao and Sperry entered into close relations with the Armenian aristocracy, did the Armenian form of their name appear.
Mar also noted that the connection between the Armenian Bagratun and Georgian Bagrationi dynasties can be explained through their shared political background, but not through common ethnic roots. The start of citation.
The Armenian Bagratun and Georgian Bagrationi may represent different branches of a single political family, yet their principal center lies within the territory of Georgia.
Mar particularly emphasized that the rise of the Bagrationi dynasty in the 8th and 9th centuries coincided with the revival of the royal tradition of Kartli within the political space of Tao Klarjeti, a fact that points to the continuity of Georgian statehood rather than any Armenian origin. Likewise, another Georgian scholar, Niko Berzonishvili, following Javakhishvili's view, traced the origin of the Bagrationi dynasty to the Georgian ethnic and cultural sphere. According to him, the dynasty arose from the Sperry region, an area under the political and cultural influence of Kartli, from which one branch of the Bagrationi family later migrated to Armenian territory. Berzonishvili wrote, the start of citation.
The early history of the House of Bagrationi is directly linked to the southern borderlands of the Kingdom of Kartli. It is this region where we must seek the roots of their family, formed under a Georgian name within a Georgian cultural environment.
Berzonishvili further emphasized that the term Armenian Bagratids refers only to the branch of the Bagrationi family that settled in Armenia and assimilated into local traditions, but does not denote an ethnically Armenian origin for the dynasty as a whole. Georgian scholar Simon Janashia approached the question of the Bagrationi dynasty's origins from a regional political perspective. He noted that the territories of southern Georgia, Tao, Klarjeti, Shavsheti, and Speri remained under Georgian political influence during the 6th 8th centuries, even though some Armenian elements coexisted there. Start of citation. The regions of Tao and Speri, where the Bagrationi family first appears, were part of Georgia at the time. Therefore, the question of their origin must be resolved within the context of Georgian history, not Armenian. The end of citation. According to Janashia, the dynasty referred to in Armenian sources as the Bagratids corresponds to a branch of the Georgian Bagrationi house. Modern-day Georgian historian David Muzhelishvili echoes this view. The origin of the Bagrationi dynasty must be considered within the framework of Georgian historical processes. Speri and Tao, as their cradle, were incorporated within the boundaries of Georgian statehood, and the rise of Bagrationi represented a continuation of the Georgian royal tradition. The Georgian position is also supported by Kirill Tumanov, an American scholar of Russian and Georgian origin, who pointed out that the Bagrationi dynasty was originally of Georgian stock, while the Armenian branches developed only later. The start of citation. The Bagratid successors of the Guaramids affected at first the Georgian form, but in the Armenianized lands of Klarjeti and Tao, they adopted the Armenian form. Tumanov further argued that Tao and Klarjeti initially belonged to the Georgian cultural and political sphere, and their later Armenization in language and ecclesiastical tradition only confirms the existence of an earlier Georgian foundation. Another prominent scholar, Ronald Sunni, an Armenian-American historian and one of the leading authorities on the modern South Caucasus, acknowledges the dual identity of the Bagrationi elite. Start of citation. The Bagratids were a culturally bilingual aristocracy, but their political identity was distinctly Georgian. The end of citation. Sunni does not deny the presence of Armenian cultural influence, yet he clearly states that the dynasty's full political formation occurred within the Georgian political sphere. On the opposite side, Armenian historiography traditionally maintains that the Bagratun dynasty was an ancient Armenian noble house allegedly mentioned in early Armenian sources as far back as the 2nd century BC. Nicholas Adons, an Armenian historian and Byzantinist, argued that the Bagratun were one of the oldest noble houses of Armenia, tracing their lineage to the Orontid dynasty, which was probably of Persian origin, Armenian royal dynasty. Adons writes, start of citation, the Bagratun, as an Armenian noble house, already existed during the Artaxide period. Their origin and inheritance are closely connected to the Orontid tradition which defines their Armenian ethnicity. The end of citation. According to his view, the Georgian Bagrationi represented a branch of the same lineage which migrated from western Armenia into Kartli, later integrating with the Georgian royal dynasties. Some Armenian historians like Hovsep Orbeli argued that Tao Klarjeti, Speri, and Shavsheti were during the period of the Bagrationi family's rise under Armenian political and cultural influence. German Orientalists Josef Marquardt and Heinrich Hübschmann examined the name Bagrat from a linguistic perspective. They concluded that the term derived from an Iranian-Armenian onomastic form, suggesting Armenian or Iranian influence but not a direct Georgian linguistic origin. This episode coming to an end and objectively requires that we also say a few words about the Byzantine sources. Byzantine sources concerning the origins of the Bagrationi dynasty are quite diverse and play an important role in studying the history of this royal house. Particularly noteworthy is the work of Emperor Constantine Porphyrogenitus on the governance of the empire, where this 10th century author repeatedly mentions the Bagrationi family and expresses special respect towards them. Constantine Porphyrogenitus describes the Bagrationi dynasty as descendants of the biblical King David, which directly reflects the medieval concept of the divine origin of monarchs. He notes that the Georgian kings of the Bagrationi line are of David's lineage, which in turn demonstrates the influence of Georgian royal ideology on the Byzantine intellectual sphere. Furthermore, Byzantine historians such as John Scalises, Michael Attaliaitis, and George Kadranos associate the Bagrationi dynasty with the idea of Christian royal heritage. For them, the Bagrationi represented one of the principal heirs of Christian kingship in the East, often perceived as natural allies of Byzantium. On the other hand, some Byzantine chronicles, perhaps driven by patriotic motives, sought to link the origins of the Bagrationi to the Byzantine aristocracy itself, suggesting that one branch of the family belonged to the noble circle of Constantinople. In the end, most Georgian historians believe the Bagrationi dynasty originated in what is now southern Georgia, in the historic lands of Speri and Tao-Klarjeti. They argue that any Armenian influence came later through cultural contact, but that does not change the dynasty's ethnic roots or national identity. Armenian historians, however, hold the opposite view. They trace the Bagrationi back to the Armenian Bagratun family, suggesting that one branch later became Georgianized and adopted the Georgian form of the name Bagrationi. Western scholars are generally divided into three camps. Some side with the Georgian position, others lean towards the Armenian one, and the third group remains neutral, seeing the Bagrationi dynasty as a blend of both Armenian and Georgian aristocratic traditions. Despite these differences, all sides agree on one key point. The dynasty's political center and main sphere of power were firmly based in Georgia. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.